she's one with father. The process of symbiosis, merger, fusion, and so on, ensures the inappropriateness of sex drives and urges, romantic involvement, and intimacy. Now, until age 36 months, there's no harm done. It's just a way for the child to rehearse and exercise and develop skills when it comes to future relationships. But if it continues beyond 36 months, we're in trouble because the child hasn't separated, hasn't individuated, is still enmeshed, is still merged and fused with the mother, and therefore is sexually cathected, romantically invested, and inappropriately intimate with the mother. So this is one source of autoerotism. I'm sorry. But there's another reason for autoerotism, and it has to do with the forbidden object. In emotional and covert incest, the child is having object relations with a forbidden object. It's taboo to have sex with mother. It's taboo to be father's wife. So there is an element of forbidden in emotional covert incest, and that's why we call it incest. Autoerotism develops or emerges as a solution. The child says, I cannot have sex with mommy, it's not okay, it's taboo. The daughter says, I will go that far with daddy, but I won't cross a certain boundary, it's taboo. But on the other hand, I cannot betray mommy by having a girlfriend. I cannot betray mother by getting married. I cannot betray mother by being sexually attracted to my classmates. On the other hand, I cannot betray father by having a boyfriend. I cannot betray father by getting married to a man. I cannot betray father by looking at boys in a certain way. There's a sense of betrayal. So the child says, I cannot have sex with mother or father. I cannot be romantically involved with mother or father. My intimacy with mother or father is probably not okay. There's some taboo element, some forbidden component, and the messaging from society is such that it's clear that something's wrong. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to not cross certain boundaries. For example, I'm going to not have sex with mother. I'm going to not have sex with father, but I'm also going to avoid having sex with anyone else because I don't want to betray mother, because I don't want to betray father. I'm not going to have a relationship with anyone, because if I have a relationship with anyone, it's like abandoning mother. It's like abandoning father. And I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to do that because the well-being and happiness and life, prolonged life, longevity of my father and mother depend on me. My intimacy, my romantic emotions, feelings, our interactions as spouses, me and my mother, me and my father, these keep my mother and father alive, functioning and smiling. I can't betray them. I can't stab them in the back. I can't do this to them. I can't find a substitute to mother. I can't go with someone who will replace father. No way. So instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to fall in love with myself. I'm going to be sexually attracted to myself. Autoerotism is the solution. I can have a relationship. I can be sexually attracted. I can even have sex, but with myself. And this way, I'm not betraying mommy. I'm not stabbing daddy in the back. I'm not abrogating my responsibilities. I'm fulfilling my duties and obligations as a good son or a good daughter. If I never develop a relationship and never have sex and so on with others, and only with myself, then I'm okay. Autoerotism is a defense a defense against a deep-set sense of guilt. Now this of course leads to sexual difficulties later in life and to emotional romantic dysfunctions, also known as insecure attachment styles. I said that a parentified, adultified child who has experienced or is in the throes of emotional covert incest, and let it be clear that emotional covert incest is lifelong. It's not limited to the first years of life. It's a lifelong thing. The mother who has been enmeshed and entangled in an incestuous covert relationship with her son will pursue this relationship to her dying day and will prevent the son from separating, individuating, develop appropriate relationships with other women, getting married, having a family, and so on. And if he does any of these things, she will try to undermine and sabotage it to the best of her ability, blackmail the child, extort the child, threaten the child, and so on. So all this causes difficulties, as I said. In the sexual, as far as sex is concerned, this kind of children turned adults, this kind of people, they need to objectify and dehumanize their intimate partners. Why? In order to have sex, they need to regard their partners as inhuman, as pieces of meat, as object, as sex dolls, as masturbatory dildos, anything but human beings. Why is that? Because if you owe exclusivity and allegiance to mommy, to your mother, and you are having sex with a woman you love, a woman you see as a full-fledged person, then you are betraying mother. You're cheating on mother. It's simply cheating. It's infidelity. But if you're having sex with an object, the equivalent of a sex worker, a prostitute, if you're having sex with a dehumanized, objectified body of a woman, there is no betrayal here, because your relationship with mommy is an emotional incest. There's no sex there. It's covert incest. It's not open among the bed sheets. So, if you're having sex with a non-human, with a sex doll, then your mother won't feel bad. She won't be able to castigate you and criticize you and chastise you and berate you. She won't be able to complain because you're not having sex. You're not having sex with another woman. You're not getting emotionally attached to another woman. You're not betraying your mother emotionally. If you're having an emotionally incestuous relationship with your mother and you're having no emotions with any other woman, then there's no infidelity here. So this kind of parentified children who have undergone or are still undergoing emotional incest tend to render their partners non-human. They defeminize women, they emasculate men, they objectify, they dehumanize, they have sadistic, punitive sex, and so on and so forth. But some of these parentified, emotionally children who've been subject to emotional incest simply become emotionally sexually dysfunctional, erectile dysfunction, or they revert to asexuality. They're not sexually active. They remain virgins for life, or they have very scarce or rare sex, or they have sex with sex workers. They pay for it. So, autoerotism and sexual dysfunction are an attempt to square the circle. I'm going to have sex, but I'm going to have sex with myself. I'm gonna treat myself as a love or sexual object. Or I'm gonna have sex, but I'm gonna have sex with non-humans, with pieces of meat, with sex dolls. I'm gonna dehumanize and objectify and treat sadistically my partners. And I'm not gonna get attached emotionally, because that would be betrayal. That would be betraying the parent, betraying the mother, betraying the father. I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do this because I love them, I want them to be happy, and I want them to live long. And they keep informing me, they keep signaling, they keep telling me that without my intimacy, without my romantic attachment, without my functioning as a spouse, they would die. So you're beginning to see that emotional or covert incest is the primordial and prototypical shared fantasy. The narcissist, for example, develops a shared fantasy first and foremost with his mother of origin, with his biological mother. It's a fantasy that has very strong incestuous overtones and undertones. It's covert, but it's clearly inappropriate and forbidden and taboo in many respects. It is when the mother rejects the child within this shared fantasy that narcissism is born. Narcissism is when the child forms, like any child. Remember, it's a universal phase. It's the rule. When the child forms symbiosis with mother, merges with her, fuses with her, gets enmeshed with her, until age 24 to 36 months. And then the mother, on the one hand, does not allow him to separate and individuate, either because she is all over him, monopolizes him, doesn't allow him to breathe or to interact with peers or to go out to play or whatever, or idolizes him, or pedestalizes him, or instrumentalizes him. So either because the parent is all over him, or because the parent rejects the child. These are two developmental pathways. Initially, the child develops a shared fantasy with the mother. And this shared fantasy has very pronounced elements of emotional covert incest. And then, if the parent is bad, if the parent is immature, selfish, depressed, absent, if the parent is a dead parent, dead mother, then the mother would either encourage the incestuous covert incest, emotional incest. She would encourage it. She would perpetuate the symbiotic shared fantasy by controlling the child, by a takeover of the child, by not allowing the child to develop his own identity and life, his own individuality. Or this kind of mother can reject the child. Having rejected the child remains stuck in the shared fantasy phase because he's trying to make it work. He's trying to make it to have a good, happy ending. He's trying to transition to separation individuation by putting the shared fantasy behind him. But the child cannot do this because of the rejection of the mother. The mother rejects the child and refuses to play game, refuses to collaborate. He refuses to. It's as if the child is playing chess with the mother and then she upturns the board and all the pieces fall apart. So the child remains stuck. Either way, the child remains stuck in emotional covert incest in a primordial shared fantasy. If the parent encourages the incest, encourages the inappropriate, forbidden emotional tie, the parent perpetuates the shared fantasy, thereby preventing separation and individuation. Or if the parent walks away, breaks up with the child, refuses to collaborate, and the child remains stuck in a repetition compulsion, constantly reenacting the shared fantasy, attempting to bring it to an end, to enable him to move on. The problem with the emotional covert incest is that the communication is mostly non-verbal. The emotional incest subverts proper signaling and proper communication by creating a hidden, forbidden text. Something that is in the air, is clear to both parties, but can never be discussed. So it's a kind of ambient abuse. In my view, and my view is in the absolute minority, in my view, the effects of emotional covert incest are far worse than the effects of open, overt sexual incest. Because covert incest, emotional incest, is not clearly wrong. It is very disorienting. There is a role confusion. It's unclear when each stage ends and another begins. It's unclear where the child ends and the parent begins. There are no boundaries. The child cannot separate, cannot individuate. The shared fantasy becomes the dominant mode of organization and operation, and the only relationship the child experiences. Both parties become habituated. These very sick behaviors, pathological behaviors, become habits. And as I said, they cause enormous damage to sexual functioning, to intimacy, capacity for intimacy, to attachment, to bonding, to going on with life, creating a family, having children, having a boyfriend, having a girlfriend. All this is massively disrupted because the mother or the father occupy the object space. The child transitions from narcissism, primary narcissism, infantile narcissism. The child transitions from this phase to object relations. Infantile, primary narcissism is when the child regards itself as the love object or the sex object, because he's not aware of the existence of any other objects. And then when he becomes aware that other objects exist, other people exist, the child transitions to object relations, begins to interact with other people, learns skills, social skills, sexual skills, becomes acquainted with scripts, sexual scripts, for example, cultural scripts. All this is prevented. Emotional covert incest prevents all this from happening because the child is not allowed to exit the shared fantasy where the only object is the child mother, the fused object. The self object is fused. So within the shared fantasy space, the only allowed object is the object that represents the fusion, the merger, the symbiosis between mother and child. So that whatever emotions the child directs at itself are also automatically and ipso facto directed at the mother. Much later, this happens with the father. This could happen with the father as well. Emotional covert incest is different between men and women because the mother plays almost an exclusive role in personal growth and development until age 36 months. So, covert emotional incest and shared fantasies of emotional incest prior to age 36 months are exclusively only with the mother, and therefore with boys. So, boy children, male children, are likely to develop emotional covert incest with a mother prior to age 36 months, and female children, girls, are likely to develop covert emotional incest with the father after age 36 months. And that is precisely why sexual incest is much more common with girls than with boys, because they enter a shared fantasy of emotional incest much later in life, and it continues well into adolescence, where they are ripe for sex. So this is the picture. You see the intimate, no pun intended, connections between the narcissist's shared fantasy and emotional covert incest. We can generalize and say that the narcissist's shared fantasy is actually a reenactment of the covert emotional incest with his mother. He chooses an intimate partner, he converts her into a maternal figure, and then he develops an incestuous relationship with her. This leads in many cases to asexuality, sexlessness, because you can't have sex with your mother, on the one hand, and on the other hand, in a desperate attempt to not betray the original mother by having sex or falling in love with another woman, the narcissist abuses his intimate partner, sexually and emotionally, as a way to distance himself from any possibility of betrayal. He says, it's like he's saying to his mother, he's signaling to his mother, you see, I haven't betrayed you. I'm treating her badly. I'm treating my wife, I'm treating my girlfriend badly. I'm not having sex with her. Or when I'm having sex with her, it's sadistic and objectifying and dehumanizing and degrading. And I definitely don't have any emotions involved. So don't worry. Don't worry. You're my first and only love. That's the message. That's the hidden, occult message. And of course, this creates a lot of ambivalence in the child. These children grow up to love the mother in a very, very sick, dependent way. It's not really love, as I said, it's enmeshment. And on the other hand, to hate the mother. Because somewhere deep inside, these children, as they grow up, realize that mother is holding them back. Mother is not allowing them to become. Mother is decimating their potential. Mother is killing them and then mummifying them, the same way the guy in Psycho, Norman Bates, did to his mother. And there's a lot of anger, helplessness, hopelessness, and rage, because it's very frustrating to not be allowed to separate and become you. And it is a narcissist's hope that in the next shared fantasy, he will succeed, he will separate, he will individuate, and he will say goodbye to all maternal figures, the original one and all the substitutes thereafter. And of course, it never works. It never works because emotional covert incest never stops. Even after the parent dies, it never stops. It's a lifelong affliction. It paints the world and frames it in a highly specific way, and it prevents the parentified, adultified child who is forced to play the spouse, prevents him or her from actually being a spouse to someone else.